I'm Alan Alda. This edition of Scientific American Frontiers is in Germany, where the cars come from. We'll test drive the latest fully automatic model. No hands. And we'll experience this fine design from former East Germany. We'll take to the skies, then try to find the way home. We'll journey into the brain to cure a patient with epilepsy.
I got it.
And we'll witness death-defying aerial stunts. Join me now for our special edition of Scientific American Frontiers from Germany.
GTE brings you more than the power of telecommunications products and services. A grant from GTE also brings you the power of a new world in Scientific American Frontiers. At GTE, the power is on.
Germany has a scientific tradition that's one of the oldest in the Western world. And since we've been here, we've been impressed by how much that tradition really means to German scientists who are working today. A man you'll meet a little bit later told us very proudly how his field, the study of birds, began with Emperor Frederick 800 years ago. We've got a story on the very latest in medical imaging. And of course, it was a German scientist who discovered X-rays 150 years ago. But first, we'll take a look at the highest of high tech applied to a very familiar part of our lives, the modern highway. And of course, the modern highway was invented in Germany. The first divided highway for fast, long-distance travel was built in Germany in the early 1920s. Today, packed with traffic, the Autobahn is at the center of Germany's obsession with all things automotive. There's no speed limit on most Autobahns, just traffic jams. And the freedom to drive fast is a cherished personal liberty. But the price is high. Fatal accidents are common, with human error the usual cause. Which is why Daimler-Benz, maker of Mercedes cars and trucks, has set out to teach basic driving skills to a new generation of drivers. Piloting this van is the first of these student drivers. Not the man behind the wheel, but a system of video cameras and computers in back. The prototype of a system able to drive on the Autobahn by itself.
Would you like to drive?
Yes.
Okay. Let's change places.
Andreas Kuhnli is the chief engineer here at the Mercedes Stuttgart Research Center, which features a 2-mile-long section of test track, doubling as a typical stretch of Autobahn. Okay, so
Oops.
what happened?
Okay, now you're all set.
Okay.
If you just put it in 4 and start to drive, and when you feel comfortable, then just hit the green button up here, and the system will drive for you.
Okay, so will it start driving at the speed I'm at?
Yes, it will. It goes exactly the same speed that you.
So suppose I get a little speed going then.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, now I can take my hand off.
Yes,
Why are
you
we
can.
veering here?
Okay, we were not quite in the center of the lane,
I see.
and it readjusted to the center of the lane. We're going to speed up now.
At this point, all I knew about how the system works is that video cameras are checking the lane markings on the road ahead and looking for obstacles. Now, see all this dirt in the road here?
Right.
It doesn't seem to mind that.
No, it doesn't. That didn't look like a car or a truck to it, and so it ignored it.
It was oddly exhilarating to be zipping along at 40 miles an hour with my hands in the air. But what I wanted to know, of course, was what's going on in the back of the van that makes it possible.
So back here is the control area for the system.
In case you're wondering, we are stopped now.
Here. These are a set of windows. They're looking for the marks here on the road, and you can see that they've actually marked them. And with these 10 windows here, we can actually follow the road. We know the radius of the road, where we are in the lane, And that lets us drive automatically.
Do I understand this right? Is the information that the computer is processing is only information found within these windows?
That's right.
In other words, all the rest of the picture is just not even getting communicated to the computer.
That's right. The rest of the picture is irrelevant right now. We have to do that right now because there's so much information in one of these video pictures. We have to ignore a lot of it.
Right.
Why don't we demonstrate this actually?
Sure, great, great.
Okay, Beate, können wir bitte einfach mal auf 50 fahren? Und wenn wir dann auf 50 sind, dann bitte automatisch einschalten. So we're going to get up to speed now, about 30 miles an hour, and we'll switch to automatic mode when we're up at speed.
I feel like we're doing one of those submarine movies.
Oops.
I think they've spotted us. Behind the wheel again, I soon discovered the system's limits. Now, there's a truck up ahead with workmen.
Okay.
What's going to happen now? The truck is standing dead still.
Right, I'm not sure what's going to happen.
You're not sure what's going to happen.
We may have to, in fact, we do in fact have to. Could you please brake?
Brake, yes.
Yeah, he's actually not in the lane.
He's not in the lane. He was like only about a foot over the center of the lane. So what happened there? What did the computer do?
The computer, I'm not quite sure. I think started to slow down. I didn't want to take a chance.
Right.
And so I had you retake control.
Okay.
Normally what would happen is you can go back to green.
Going back to green.
Okay, now. 60 bitte. We're now speeding up.
Right. The truck incident was a reminder that the real challenge for self-driving vehicles is spotting and reacting to obstacles. While the lower camera tracks the lanes, that's the job of the upper camera. How does it recognize, for instance, the back of a car?
It's looking for example, the lower edge, the bumper. It's a horizontal line on the road. There's got to be some vertical edges nearby. They have to be a certain distance apart. And also cars are symmetric in the back. And you can look for symmetry in the picture ahead of you. And then with a reasonable accuracy say, yes, that in fact is a vehicle.
These characteristic features are now being used to literally teach a parallel processing computer how to recognize the backs of cars. It was time to try out the van's skills when it no longer had the test track to itself.
I'll activate the system now by hitting the green button here. Once we're up to speed, I'll have Christoph pass us. Okay, Christoph, tu peux nous doubler. He will enter the road ahead of us here, the lane. We'll detect him. If he slows down, we'll slow down. If he speeds up, we'll speed up.
But of course, the true response to a car ahead on the German Autobahn isn't to follow passively behind it.
We'll now overtake. Und 70 bitte. Und zurück bitte. We've now passed Christoph, and we'll move back to the right-hand lane.
Right now, the van has to be told when to move into the passing lane. Later, a camera will check the lane and give the order automatically. But in driving, it's the unexpected that can be deadly. What if there was an accident that we turned this corner and suddenly came upon an accident? There was a truck across both lanes.
At the moment, we would probably not stop. We have work going on now. If you could retake control, say yellow, and you're in control.
Okay.
We have work going on where we look for more general obstacles, not only the back of vehicles, but also the sides.
So you're really going step by step with this now, aren't you? And as you solve those problems, then you get onto more complicated
Exactly.
issues.
We're working our way up in complexity here. And we really have to be able to find all the obstacles on the road. And there's an awful lot of them that could be out there, so it'll take a while. So
Somebody walking across the road at this point would not necessarily be picked up by your present equipment, would it?
we expect to have pedestrian detection, not at highway speeds yet, though, next year. People have a certain way that they move,
Yeah.
And we can actually look for objects that are moving in that way and find them.
And what about an animal, a deer crossing the road?
But we haven't looked for deer yet.
Yeah.
Only humans.
If you have a deer that walks like a person, he's
Then
okay.
we're in luck.
The goal of the research isn't to replace the human behind the wheel, but to share the burden of watching for and reacting to hazards. I would think it'd be really important to have a fully automatic operation here to know what's happening in these other lanes and maybe even what's happening on the other side of the divider. If something's coming at you in an accident over there and spinning out of control over here, wouldn't you need to know that?
Yeah, we would like to actually have information of 360 degrees around the car. And then given all that information, we can maneuver to be safe, number one, and secondarily to get where you want to go. That's another thing we'd actually like to do, is to basically have a vehicle where you can get in and say, I want to go from Boston to Minneapolis, and it'll do that completely automatically for you, read the traffic signs. And so our activities are seeing more what's around us, and then understanding and reacting to that in a complete sense, so the driver can really be safe, number one, and relax, number two.
Now, you should know that I wasn't in the van for this next trip.
This is the big test for us. We're now entering a public road. Okay, and I'll turn on the system now.
And as it turned out, that was the right decision.
70 bitte. Wow. Okay, kann ich?
Every time Andreas switched on the system, the van veered to the left, into the path of overtaking traffic.
Okay, kann ich? Wir haben einen Linksdrang wieder. Kann ich? Come on, baby, come on. Good, fahr. Yeah, we're having a technical problem. Again, this drift to the left.
After resetting the steering system, the van settled down in its lane. But now it became tempted by exits.
Oops, we were just about to leave the road there.
The Mercedes engineers are the first to admit that their co-pilot has a lot to learn. But they also anticipate the day when the Autobahn's safest drivers will be the easiest to spot. Dawn in Bavaria, and 6,000 pigeons begin a high-stakes race. Every weekend in hundreds of clubhouses across the country, pigeon breeders meet to register their birds in one of the most popular sports in Germany, the racing of homing pigeons.
17.
Not just pride, but big money rests on which pigeon makes it back to its home loft first. For researcher Wolfgang Wilczko, these races pose a fascinating question. How do the birds find their way?
We release this bird about 800,000 miles away from home, and it flies straight back to its home. Isn't that fascinating and worth to have an answer to this question?
Birds are taken to the release site in a closed truck in the middle of the night, so they can't simply watch where they're going. Yet as soon as they're released, they set off unerringly in the direction of home. Of all the navigational tools they could be using, one of the more obvious is the sun. Wolfgang has performed a classic series of experiments to find out if pigeons do indeed use the sun as a compass. The experiment involves giving the birds a kind of jet lag. Housed in this windowless room for a week, the birds' daytime, when the lights are on, is shifted 6 hours behind the real daytime outside. So by the end of the week, when the birds think it's dawn, it's actually 12 noon. Now comes the test. Rosie Vilchko is Wolfgang's wife and collaborator. The yellow band is for a control bird, one whose internal clock hasn't been shifted, so he knows it's now noon.
Well, he is a control bird, and home is in this general direction. I would expect him to go in approximately that direction.
The bird sets off confidently. If it is using the sun as a direction finder, it must be taking its homeward bearing from where it expects the sun to be at noon, in the south. The researchers note the bird's vanishing point, the compass bearing it was following when it disappeared from view.
Okay, da hinten ist ein Strommast. Rechts daneben sind Autobahnschilder. Den Strommast kannst du nehmen.
Den Stamm nehme ich, ja?
And for all the control birds, the vanishing point is to the east, in the direction of the home loft. Now for the birds whose internal clock has been shifted, and who are under the impression that it's 6 a.m.
He is a clock-shifted bird. His internal clock has been shifted 6 hours slow, that he misjudges the time of day, and for him it's now just early in the morning.
This bird's loft is to the east, like the controls. But unlike them, he thinks it's dawn. And since the sun rises in the east, off into the sun he flies. But since it's really noon, the sun is to the south. And so it's not east, but south that the clock-shifted birds fly. Experiments like this confirm that pigeons do indeed navigate by the sun. But they also show something else. Because while the control birds start arriving home 12 miles away after about 20 minutes, only an hour or so later the clock-shifted birds start showing up, suggesting that they had some other way to find home. In another classic experiment, Wolfgang discovered what the backup navigational system employs.
I have here a magnet which disrupts the magnetic field of the Earth.
Any internal magnetic compass a bird possesses would also be confused when the magnet is glued to its back feathers. The pigeons in the experiment have been raised without ever seeing the morning sun. So in this early morning release, they can't use the sun to steer by. With both sun compass and any magnetic compass disabled, the bird indeed seems totally lost.
I think he doesn't know where to go under these conditions. He will fly just a random direction.
The control birds in this experiment have small non-magnetic brass weights glued to their feathers. With their magnetic compass unaffected, they set off to the home loft without hesitation. The experiment confirms that pigeons use the Earth's magnetic field as well as the sun to find their way. But their direction-finding skills don't stop there.
Birds are really amazing and much more sensitive to the surrounding world than we are. So they can sense the magnetic field. They also can see ultraviolet light. They also are very sensitive to minute pressure changes. They can hear infrasound. And so their sensory world is much more extended than our sensory world is. And for orientation, they were very opportunistic and make probably use of all these cues.
So far, we've only been talking about orientation, about how birds tell direction. But to navigate, you need to know what direction to go in. So we came to a 14th century castle in southern Germany to visit with one of the true champions of long-distance navigation, the stork. This is the research station of another bird navigation expert, Dr. Peter Berthold. His work involves tracking storks. But to do that, he has to capture them.
We should try to trap at least one.
I was invited to help capture one, but then he described how our stork might react.
You can pick to the eyes and to the neck. What they normally do.
The eyes and the neck.
Oh yes, especially very often to the neck. That's what they normally do when they attack each other at nesting sites. You see, white storks can easily kill each other. If there is a pair that has started breeding and a single male is coming, they may fight terribly around the nesting site, the two males and also the female. And in some cases, you may at the final end, you may have 3 dead storks because the bill has destroyed the blood vessels, may even have penetrated the neck. Fortunately, our neck is fairly sized, though I think we'll not have that problem here.
But maybe we should just let them fly wherever they want to go.
Yes.
I mean, maybe it doesn't really matter where they're going.
And if you will be really sure, you may put your neck.
Right. Good advice. And it turned out there are a few other tricks a stork stalker should know. You grab them by the wings and then you grab them by the neck?
If it's close to the fence or so, then and it's standing more or less, then it's best you first go to the neck and then to the wing and then you take the whole bird. If it's flying against you, the best is you take it as you normally take your woman in the early morning, and then you have it that's so. No problem. That is the best you can do.
Don't grab her by the beak, though. I'm sorry. Luckily, when the big moment came, the stork chose Peter as his target.
So. This was a big catch.
Doesn't it fit kind of loosely?
No, that's okay.
I mean, if he closes his mouth and dips his head, doesn't it come off? And then he has
Normally
a pretty good
not,
shot
no.
at your eye? No?
So, holst du vielleicht noch so ein Ding zum Knie?
Ich habe hier.
Ah ja.
Aha, see, that's sort of what I anticipated.
Sollen wir ein Stück
I'm
Papier
not that
reinstecken?
dumb. I can. Do you want me to hold the beak?
Oh, if you like, yeah.
The point of all this was to strap a small radio transmitter on the stork, a transponder that can be tracked by satellite.
Okay. We'll release the bird. Oh, come on. Okay, very good. So, would you please come in?
Thank you.
Okay. Be careful with these steps here.
Now, once you release these storks,
Yeah.
you can track where they are at any given moment. You know
Oh yes,
where they are, wherever they are.
At least every day we are able to have several locations.
Nice.
So I think this one is especially interesting. This 14,500.
The satellite tracking system can pinpoint each stork exactly as it makes its immense migration from Europe to Africa. And where is this bird right now?
And this bird is right now, we can just see it here on the map. The bird is presently exactly in the area of the Bosporus, this very critical area where they have to cross here and not to go too far to have to cross the Black Sea or in other parts of the Mediterranean.
The stork's extraordinary journey dramatically illustrates the importance of a bird's having some sort of map in its head, that it knows where it is and where it's going. And while researchers now have plenty of ideas about how birds steer, they're much less certain about what they use for a map. That's why Wolfgang Wilczko's student, Peko Kalpit, is setting up a new experiment in this aviary back in Frankfurt. First, Peko puts 48 cups of sand in holes. Then she sets out a number of glass bottles and jars alongside some of the cups. Most of the cups don't have these landmarks nearby. Now she hides 3 seeds in each of just 3 cups, all near the glass landmarks.
The first pigeon that's going to come in here has been trained to dig in this certain sector, in this, and this cup. So I'm now hiding these seeds in there. The bird that will come in here has 48 choices, 48 possible choices, but hopefully will only dig in these 3 cups.
Remember, the bird has been here many times before, and the seeds have always been in the same cups.
Yes, right sector right now. Okay, heading for the right cup. This is the first right probe right there, and he's eating. He cannot see the seeds unless he probes. And he found the first cup. Now he has two more to go. Okay, that's the second one. It's 2 out of 3. Kind of indecisive. Okay, this would be a wrong probe because it's in the wrong sector. This also.
Now 2 out of 3 is pretty good.
And now it's obviously going random because...
And it seems likely that the bird has used the glass landmarks to help find the corn. To test this hypothesis, Wolfgang and Peko moved the glass bottles from the sector where the corn is hidden to another sector. But while the bottles move to new cups, the corn stays where it was. Now another bird enters the arena. Like the first, he's always found corn near the bottles. But this time...
So, the first choice was the original sector. Second one is right. And the third one is right, and the experiment is over.
Not one single mistake. It went in there and probed 3 times, 3 correct choices. I'm speechless.
Amazing.
If I were a pigeon, I might be using those nice shiny bottles as landmarks. But the pigeons obviously aren't. What they are using as maps remains a mystery. It could be other landmarks outside the cage. And it's Peko Kalpit's challenging task to learn to look at the world strictly from a pigeon's point of view.
We, of course, as humans would say, okay, we have this kind of bottle, this shape, and if I only head for this one bottle, I will always get my food, my reward. But the bird obviously doesn't think that way, and that's what the whole idea is about. We're trying to get into what the bird is thinking, how the bird is reacting to our environment, and how it sees it. And this is one first step.
It was the fall of 1989, and the Berlin Wall, the most powerful symbol of the Cold War, was coming down. All through that summer of '89, people from Eastern Europe had been streaming across the newly opened borders into the West. Well, when I say streaming, actually I mean driving, because almost everybody who came drove in one of these. It's called a trabant. So many people made their trip to freedom in a Trabi, and it's earned its place in history here in a section of the wall. Even today, this odd little car inspires feelings of love, hate, frustration, and affection. Television news footage of the exodus to the west made the Trabi famous throughout the world. It had been a well-known and highly desirable car throughout Eastern Europe for over 30 years. But now, nobody wants a Trabi. I got a chance to find out why when longtime owner Vanessa Roerger introduced me to the unique driving experience that is the trabant. What's first?
First is up.
In and up.
Wait a second. Here, 1. It's the first.
And what about second? Where will that be?
Second is here.
Uh-huh.
Second.
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
4th.
Not so easy. Huh?
Here.
Okay.
Here first.
Okay. Okay. This is first, right? Okay. Here we
No,
go.
that is a-
That's what's that?
that
Reverse?
is rückwärts, yeah, reverse.
Excuse me. No horn. There's no horn.
Oh, here is the horn. Here.
What?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Very good.
Dankeschön. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Not bad, huh?
Yeah.
Which way should we go here? There's no signal.
Right.
I have to put my arm out the window. Huh?
Yes, the signal.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Where? Oh, that's a signal?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But you have to make it by yourself back. It's not automatic.
It doesn't go back by
No,
itself.
it doesn't.
Okay. Nice. It takes the bumps nicely.
Very not quiet.
No, no. Well, it's a little noisier than a Rolls Royce, but
Yeah,
not
a
much.
little bit.
I like the way it has this kind of seaside motion, you know. Okay.
different.
Oh, I still have to signal on from the last turn, so that's good. It saves you a lot of trouble. While it's easy to make fun of the Trabant today, in the East Germany of the 1960s, it was communism's answer to the Volkswagen Beetle, a cheap, economical people's car. When the first Trabant was designed in 1952, its engineers faced a unique challenge. Werner Reichelt.
Wir hatten in der DDR kein Stahlblech und mussten deshalb einen Ersatzstoff finden. Wir haben unter Verwendung von Baumwollabfällen und Phenolharzen, die in ausreichenden Mengen vorhanden waren, diesen Karosserie-Trabantstoff gemacht, der sich auch als Karosseriekörper eigentlich recht gut bewährt hat.
The cotton waste came from Russia. The phenol residues from the East German dye industry. Combined into a sandwich, they made a plastic called Duraplast. The Trabant's body was the world's first made entirely from recycled materials. It was strong and so durable that the average Trabant's life was 28 years. Over 3 million rolled off the production line in Zwickau. And there are still more than 1 million on the road, much to most people's distress. The car's two-stroke engine sounds like a noisy lawnmower, and it spews out 10 times more pollution than a modern car. So today, there's not only no market for new Trabis, but they're trying to get rid of the old ones. In a neat twist of fate, that job has fallen to the Trabi's designer, Werner Reichelt.
In dieser Halle wurden die Duraplast-Teile von 1955 bis 1991 für ca. 3 Millionen Trabant bearbeitet. Im gesamten Werk arbeiteten etwa 11.000 Menschen.
And today, the Zwickau plant where the cars were made is the site of an ambitious program to destroy them. The usual way of getting rid of an old car is to crush it. But with the Trabi, that's more easily said than done. That Duraplast body that was once such a neat solution to East Germany's metal shortage just won't go away. Burning it would release harmful chemicals into the air, and the same chemicals might leach into the groundwater if the bodies were buried in a landfill. So here, where the world's first recycled cars were made, Werner Reichelt is figuring out how to recycle them once again.
Geht's gut? Okay, werden wir fertig heute.
First come the easy parts. The glass. And the little two-stroke engine, mostly useful only as scrap metal. But then there's that 1,400 pounds of plastic body.
Das ist ein Stück vom Trabant. Das ist das, was übrig bleibt nach der Verwertung. Man sieht hier sehr deutlich die Kombination von Phenolharz und Baumwollfasern. Hier sieht man die Faserwerkstoffe, die das Phenolharz verstärken und die damit diesen elastischen Werkstoff ergeben, der durch die Kombination von Phenol und Baumwolle entsteht.
This chemical sandwich is the real challenge. But Herr Reichelt is experimenting with an ingenious scheme. First, the duraplast is shredded into small pieces. These are then mixed with cement. And in a process Herr Reichelt claims is completely effective, but also a trade secret. The material is then treated to render the potentially dangerous phenol residues safe and inert. The result? Bricks. So the little car that helped destroy the wall may soon become the building blocks of new walls. A process that for the German environment, as well as German sanity, can't come a moment too soon. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, I can't get out. This is unbelievable. I can't get out. The thing wouldn't close before, wouldn't open. Now I can't get out. Thank you very much. That's good. It's nice. Somebody gets out and opens it for you. I can't get out of this now. There. Look at that. Now it works.
Doch, sometimes it works, sometimes no.
Yeah, that's good.
That is special Trabi.
That was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Epilepsy has destroyed Manfred Pelz's life. His increasingly frequent seizures prevent him from working. He's been waiting for this moment for years.
Ein bisschen an Druck am Bauch habe ich, aber ich glaube, das kommt mehr von nüchtern sein.
Epilepsy affects 1 in 100 people. Most can have their seizures controlled by drugs. But for Manfred, as for many other epileptics, the only hope of a normal life lies in the hands of surgeons like Dr. Michael Buchfelder.
He has taken all the drugs which were available, and they have not been able to stop his epilepsy. And this kind of surgery is his last chance to get rid of his epilepsy.
But today, the surgical treatment of epilepsy is rare. Because as you're about to see, it requires a complex and nerve-wracking procedure before the surgery can even begin. The goal of that surgery is to remove from deep within Manfred's brain the tiny speck of tissue that's the source of his disease. But right now, his surgeons have only a very rough idea of where that epileptic focus lies. So they must first find it, and that means opening his skull. The next step is to reveal the brain itself by cutting through and peeling back the membrane protecting it. This array of electrodes is what will locate the epileptic focus by placing it directly onto the surface of Manfred's brain.
Emotionally, we think, don't let others touch our brains. But in terms of actual figures, arithmetically, it's pretty safe as compared to gallbladder surgery. Isn't that striking?
The electrode array in place, Manfred's skull is closed up again, temporarily. The next day, he's resting comfortably, with the electrodes on his brain connected to a monitoring system. He's also being observed by video cameras. Now the medical team watches and waits for Manfred to have a seizure. Here's what happens during an epileptic seizure. It begins when the nerve cells of the epileptic focus suddenly start firing off abnormal bursts of electricity. These set off nearby cells, and soon the whole brain is caught up in an electrical storm. By this time, the electrodes on Manfred's brain are all picking up this furious activity, and Manfred himself is unconscious in the full throes of an epileptic seizure. But now look again at what happened. This time, at the moment the seizure was triggered. At this point, the only electrodes picking up abnormal signals are those nearest the epileptic focus. These signals are displayed on the screen even before the seizure itself begins. And because the position of each electrode is known, This information allows the epileptic focus itself to be located. In Manfred's case, the focus is deep within his temporal lobe and close to the center that generates speech. So before the surgeons can destroy the epileptic focus, they have to be sure they won't also damage his speech center, which means that too must be precisely mapped. To do that, the electrodes on Manfred's brain are used again, this time not to record its electrical activity, but to stimulate it. Neurologist Hermann Stephan.
We stimulate one channel, and if the patient stops talking, then we have found his speech area.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Manfred is
6,
asked to
7,
count.
8, 9,
One by one,
10,
the electrodes are
11,
activated.
13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Die Elektrode 9, 10.
This time it's electrode number 19. It will be switched on as Manfred gets to 10 in his counting.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13,
There's a slight hesitation,
15, 16,
suggesting electrode 19 is close to the speech center.
20.
Now it's electrode number 20.
21, 22, 23, 24,
Start, Stimulation.
25, 25.
And this one is even closer.
We stimulated this electrode here, and there was an arrest of speech.
It turns out that Manfred's epileptic focus and his speech center are about 3 centimeters apart. Close, but cutting out one without damaging the other should be possible. Manfred's surgery is scheduled for 3 days from now. But for some epileptic patients, even the elaborate brain mapping that will permit Manfred's surgery just isn't accurate enough. Felicitas Kaiser is an apprentice furniture restorer.
Und ich zum Beispiel was gefragt worden bin, dann habe ich zwar gesehen, dass der Mund sich bewegt hat, aber ich konnte keine Antwort mehr geben. Und dann das Schlimmste eigentlich daran war noch das, wenn ich wieder zu mir gekommen bin, dann habe ich überhaupt nicht mehr gewusst, wo ich bin. Orientierung habe ich Schwierigkeiten gehabt.
Ich gehe schon mal vor, kommen Sie bitte mit in die Untersuchungskabine.
When Felicitas's brain was mapped electrically, her epileptic focus appeared to be right on top of her speech center, meaning surgery couldn't even be attempted.
Und jetzt drehen Sie sich bitte zur Seite. Drehen Sie sich mit dem ganzen Körper.
But at that time, 2 years ago, a revolutionary new brain mapping machine was first being tested. In a room shielding it from the Earth's magnetic field, this machine, called the Krenikon, maps the electrical activity of the brain by picking up the faint traces of magnetism it produces. Signals 1 billion times weaker than the Earth's magnetic field. The Krenikon is the German entry in an international race to produce scanners based on detecting biomagnetic fields using supersensitive microchips. Cooled by liquid helium in a giant thermos, the detectors can map the electrical activity of nerves, the heart, and in Felicitas Kaiser's case, the brain.
We can clearly identify 3 spike events on the screen.
So sensitive is the machine that it can pick up the abnormal spikes produced by an epileptic focus, even when they're not strong enough to trigger a seizure. What's more, it can locate the focus much more accurately than any previous method could. In Felicitas's case, to a spot that could be clearly distinguished from her speech center.
The red spot shows the center of the focal epileptic activity localized by MEG. And the speech center is above, let's say, 1 centimeter.
That 1 centimeter was enough to allow Felicitas to get the same surgery that Manfred is about to undergo. It's 3 days since the electrodes mapped his brain. And now Dr. Buchfelter and his team are using that map to find and cut out the focus of his epilepsy. First, Buchfelter identifies some landmarks that will lead him toward the focus.
So we'll look for the optic nerve and the carotid artery. This whitish structure here, that's the optic nerve. And that's the carotid artery. And we'll follow the carotid artery.
probing down between nerve and artery. Damage to either could be catastrophic for Manfred. The surgical team gets to the right region of the brain. After an hour of painstaking progress, they're close enough for some last-minute on-the-spot mapping with an array of electrodes that probe directly into the brain.
This is the part of the work which makes me feel uneasy. Really, it takes so much patience.
Buchfelter plans to destroy and remove a piece of Manfred's brain, so he can't afford even the tiniest error. The electrodes he's put in place are now picking up the brain's electrical activity directly, confirming the exact position of the epileptic focus.
These are the positions of the electrodes on the brain. And this is a map, the field of the electric activity. And this is the maximum of the epileptic activity in the hippocampus.
Now everything is ready for the critical moment.
We know where to go and what to take out, namely the focus. We found it. That's it. And we're going to resect it.
It's these tiny white scraps of brain tissue that have ruined Manfred's life. This sort of surgery is still uncommon, despite its effectiveness, because it's so hard to find the epileptic focus. But with new mapping methods, especially those using biomagnetism, that's about to change.
Brain surgery is more and more an appropriate treatment for otherwise intreatable epilepsy, because due to the modern imaging methods and the information which we get about the source of epilepsy, we can localize it more precisely so that it's much safer than in the past and much more effective.
A week after Manfred's surgery, he's doing fine. His head still hurts, but he can talk. And so far, he hasn't had a seizure.
Es war ja so, dass weit hinten diese...
As for Felicitas Kaiser, she's now been seizure-free for 2 years following her surgery. She's back at work, at last able to be just like everyone else.
Ich traue mich einfach mehr als unter die Leute, ganz einfach. Und auch so, ich kann jetzt zum Beispiel machen, was ich will. Ich kann mit meinem Fahrrad unterwegs sein und nicht Angst haben, dass ich einen Anfall kriege. Oder genauso jetzt bei der Arbeit, ich kann an die Maschinen jetzt gehen. Es hat irgendwo ein ganz neues Leben angefangen in dem Moment.
On a hunting preserve near the North German town of Braunschweig, George Ruppel is after his favorite quarry, one he's hunted all over the world. More elusive than the deer or game birds most hunters track here, George's goal is nature's most versatile and ancient flying machine, one that's been around for over 200 million years.
Here we have caught a large dragonfly, one of the best flyers we have.
Its large thorax filled with flight muscles, this species is strong.
Oh, it will bite me. Ow.
And aggressive. What fascinates George about dragonflies is that they have to pack so much action into so little time. They spend up to 4 years as larvae underwater. But once they emerge as adults, they have just a few weeks to reproduce and ensure the species' survival. And for that, their flying skills are critical. George Ruppel is well known not only for what he's discovered about dragonfly flight, but how he's learned it. How do you look for them? Do you scan with your eyes? Or do you...
Yes, I scan with my eyes and then I detect little blue and black bodies.
Dragonflies can reach speeds of up to 30 miles an hour, and they can stop, start, and reverse direction apparently instantaneously. For capturing high-speed events like this, the slow-motion camera is the scientist's standard tool. But unlike his colleagues, George shoots in the field. So what's the idea? Why come out to the to the pond and shoot. Why don't you take the dragonflies into the laboratory where the conditions are controlled?
Yes, controlled, but the dragonfly don't behave normally. They only show here in natural conditions their full behavior and even their full flight behavior. And therefore we have to go out. Please let's have a look. There is a dragonfly sitting on the stem. I hope I can film it.
The technique here is to plunge in and go where the dragonfly takes you.
Yes. Once more, I got it.
Oh, that's great. Did
you see it?
No, I'd have come closer, but my foot is stuck in the mud. Thank you. I've got both feet stuck.
Come. Okay.
George Ruppel's slow-motion footage reveals the extraordinary acrobatics allowed by two sets of independently operated wings, hovering like a helicopter. Backward flight using all four wings together. But the real advantage of filming in the field is the insight into dragonfly behavior. Here a male is beating all four wings at once in an attempt to persuade a female to go off with him to mate. She's testing his strength, and he doesn't measure up. Here, a more successful male is flying lead in a tandem flight after mating. There's a reason for his being so solicitous. The female needs to dip her tail into the water to lay the eggs he's fertilized. And by riding shotgun, he's providing cover against both predators and other males. Much of the male's behavior is driven by the need to get his own genes passed on. Here another male appears, and switching from hovering flight to full forward thrust, he tries to ram the first male away. A third male joins the brawl. In the melee, the first male gets dunked, and the attacker, going into high-powered backward flight, pulls away with the female. Then something very strange occurs. The male throws the pair of them into a somersault, and tiny drops of liquid fly from the female. The first to capture this on film, Ruppel believes that the male is emptying the female of any fertilized eggs, so that he can be the father of her offspring. Tandem flight has another advantage. Sometimes 4 pairs of wings can be better than 2. Sometimes, but not always. You have a different species at each pond? There are some 2,000 species of dragonflies, so George Ruppel is never going to be at a loss for new behaviors to observe.
Here are a lot of such small damselfly species. They fly even in cool weather because their body is not so thick, and they can warm it up by muscle contractions. If I warm it up, it will fly.
You're lucky it didn't fly into your mouth. George Ruppel does what all good scientists do. Open the eyes of the rest of us to the endless astonishments of our world.
We are lucky to have a large dragonfly.
Yeah.
We should do.
Till the next Scientific American Frontiers. Auf Wiedersehen.
GTE brings you more than the power of telecommunications products and services. A grant from GTE also brings you the power of a new world in Scientific American Frontiers. At GTE, the power is on.
For a transcript of this program, send $5 to Scientific American Frontiers, 70 Coolidge Hill Road, Watertown, Massachusetts, 02172. Please be sure to specify which episode you'd like.
This is PBS.